Building Decarbonization. This is the fastest growing clean energy sector we've ever seen. It's taken energy efficiency 40 years to never meet the mainstream. It took solar 30 years to be able to finally really crack through and actually start to be required by law in some places and to be able to hit cost parity. Building decarbonization wasn't even talked about in 2016, and you have whole states like New York and Washington and California, cities like New York City, Chicago, LA, all moving forward saying all new construction will be all electric moving forward. And we just have never seen a clean energy sector move that fast before.
All right, welcome back, Solar Warriors. If you're new here, I just want to say thank you for giving us the one non-renewable resource you've got. Of course, that is your time, and letting us into your earballs, your head space, the place that you seek away from, if you're like me, the noisy house and the children and the chaos of work. I hope that you'll find some respite today in this conversation. I definitely hope that you will find some inspiration and that we will pique your aspirations, that will help you move forward in your career and your business as we drive the clean energy transition ever forward. And the clean energy transition is much, much more, as we've talked about before, than solar and energy efficiency. And anytime I talk about building decarbonization, one person is on the tip of tongue, top of mind, great personal branding, but from just about everyone I know in the space. When I say, well, I really want to understand, what are the stakes if people really think that we're going to get rid of all the gas ranges in homes, and how do we drive the conversation forward around heat pumps? Panama Bartholomy of the Building Decarbonization Coalition is always a person that folks say, Nico, why have you not talked to Panama? So our good friend Scott Muller a couple of years ago put us together, and we've been dancing around trying to schedule between our busy lives this conversation. You now get to benefit vicariously from my learning as I nerd out and find out everything you want to know about building decarbonization. You will want to know, if I need to instill more confidence in you, that before the Building Decarbonization Coalition, Panama also was the director of the Investor Confidence Project. There you go. He worked tirelessly to unlock capital markets for energy efficiency project development. He also was an advisor to the Energy and Natural Resources California Assembly Speaker John Perez. He served as deputy director of the CEC Efficiency and Renewables Division, and so much more fun stuff that we will talk about. He worked for the California Conservation Corps, all our Peace Corps and AmeriCorps friends out there. So stay tuned. I promise you will not regret it. And if you do like conversations like this, leaders on the front lines of the energy transition, you are in the right place. Hit that subscribe button, because twice a week we will tickle your ears with similar such inspiration. Folks just like Panama who are out there doing their thing, hoping that they can make a difference because they know that you want to make a difference. That's why they're sharing their story here with you. Let's get ready to tune up your skills, Solar Warrior, as we tune into another powerful conversation here on Suncast. Panama, how'd I do? You're not a solar junkie like we are. You okay being called a Solar Warrior?
Absolutely. I was raised in an all solar house. So
no way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
An all solar, was that off grid?
Yeah. Yeah. Off grid, and then later on in life in an on grid one.
No way, man. That's awesome. You were solar before solar was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the original pioneers, David Katz, of alternative energy engineering up out of Redway. Was
Did you solar?
Land partner. Yeah. Yeah. He was my dad's land partner.
Way.
Yeah.
That's super cool. How have we not talked about this? I'm a big fan of David Katz.
Yeah,
shout out DK if you're listening. We love you. David Katz is a legend, man. That's super cool. You never could have imagined that your dad was land partners with a solar legend. He didn't know it at the time, of course. David Katz doesn't consider himself a legend now. I'll tell you what's true about David Katz and your dad and you and me and most of the folks that we lean in with and aspire to be like is the thing that Benjamin Franklin said long ago. The problem with doing nothing is not knowing when you're finished. Think about that one, Solar Warriors, while Panama Bartholomy racks our brains with his inspiring quote for the week. Panama, what you got for us?
One of my favorites is something I learned early on from a California Energy Commissioner, John Giesman. And he would talk about, well, that right there is the triumph of hope over experience. whenever he would be brought a something that just seemed completely implausible to him with his 40 years of experience in the field. And it's one that I bring all the time when I look at a situation and say, that's not going to work based on my 25 years in this space.
What was his name?
That one.
The assemblyman?
John Giesman, California Energy Commissioner.
Oh my goodness, that is so good. All right. Thank you, John Giesman. The triumph of hope over experience. I can assure you, along with the problem with doing nothing, that quote is going to live in the canon. I'm actually going to put that in good old Evernote. I don't know about you, but I keep an Evernote list. It's a long running list of my favorite quotes. What's a good example in your life recently, Panama, of the triumph of hope over experience?
Yeah, the work of our organization to try to end pollution in buildings. People all know that it's going to be critical if we're going to meet our climate goals to do that. But the pathway there is usually really uncertain. We know where we're at. We know where we want to get to. But there's a whole bunch of different paths that people are looking at and hoping that we can have hundreds of millions of consumer choices go the right direction every single time, and they always have a contractor and the technology available to them. I just find really hard to believe. And so while the current market model of HVAC delivery and plumbing delivery and cooking technology delivery, we're going to have to optimize that and work on that. We're going to need some sort of a climate and justice backstop as well if we're going to meet our climate goals. And so for me, a lot of times, it's just like my experience with people is they don't always make the right choice. And we shouldn't be basing our climate future off of individual consumer choice alone.
I think we're going to dig deep into that. Would you say that pretty tidily sums up then like the macro problem set that you are endeavoring to solve, or how would you define it differently if so?
Yeah, Nico, we work on climate change. And so 30% of emissions in the country come out of the building sector. A lot of that direct emissions from burning fossil fuels on site. And so what my organization, the Building Decarbonization Coalition, works on is trying to completely eliminate pollution from all buildings. Generally, that gets us beyond the building, and it gets us into the gas network as well. And this isn't just a buildings issue, but the dirty little secret of the gas industry is that the vast majority of profits that gas utilities make come from the building sector. 90% of America's gas utilities get their, America's gas utilities get 90% of their profits from the building sector, from providing the infrastructure to deliver natural gas to all these buildings. 90%.
I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense, right? Because they've got a dedicated infrastructure that took a century to build, to deploy, and it is deploying it predominantly to buildings, homes and office buildings for the purpose of running that facility, either heating it or cooling it or boiling the water within it. Wow.
Yes. It's only about a quarter of the overall gas use in America goes to buildings, but 90% of the profits. And so...
wait a minute. So 25% of the usage generates 90% of the profits. That sounds pretty familiar, right? Pareto principle.
Yep, absolutely. The rest of it goes to electricity generation and to industrial uses. But the real profit that gas utilities make is laying out pipe in the ground, 60 to 80-year pipe that they borrow money and have ratepayers repay over that time period. And so the vast majority of their profits come from that, and 2/3 of that 90% is the residential sector just by itself. And it makes sense because you're laying out more and more pipe for all those neighborhoods rather than individual commercial buildings or generation plants.
God, what does that mean then for states like California that have now a mandate to eliminate natural gas infrastructure in new construction?
Yeah, California is running up against the constraints of the federal law about what they think they can do on energy efficiency. So you have about 100 communities across California, but also across the country. 1 in 4 Americans now lives in a jurisdiction that's adopted a building decarbonization law that affects construction in their area. But in California, over 100 local governments, and then the state has been passing laws to try to either restrict or completely disallow gas in new construction. The state itself has said, if you're going to build, you need to be using heat pump as the baseline for the consideration of whether you need the building code for either water heating or space heating, and we're expecting them to require it for both water heating and space heating in the next code update. What that'll mean, Nico, is that you're still going to be allowed to build with gas in California if you're not in a local government that's adopted this law by state law, but it's going to be very expensive to build with gas. And so the state of California thinks that's about as far as they can go individually on new construction under their energy efficiency law. There's other opportunities under, say, air quality or greenhouse gas laws.
I feel like there is a lot that we need to unpack. Generally speaking, a lot of our listeners, our audience, they really are well attuned to the science and the need for on-site generation, residential, commercial, even utility scale, centralized power plants, but generated from clean, renewable electrons. I feel like your world operates a lot more on negawatts than megawatts. And how do we conserve, save energy? How do we make decisions long-term that require lower footprint of electrical usage on site? With all of that context in place, introduce us then to the organization that you run called the Building Decarbonization Coalition and how it's going to address or even solve the problems that we've enunciated so far.
So I've been in the building space for about 25 years, a lot of it in state government in California, but about 4 years over in Europe. And I came back to America in 2017, fully planning to pivot out of buildings. It's like, all right, this is one of those opportunities. I can go work in transportation where all the money and the glamour is, or I'll force everybody to be vegan and work on food policy or something like that. Right. But when I came back, there was a completely different conversation happening on buildings than it's ever been happening. For 40 years, we've been talking about how do you cinch down energy use incrementally, little by little. And when I came back to the United States in 2017, the conversation was how do you eliminate pollution completely from buildings through building electrification? And so it was a really new opportunity. And what I saw was, as I talked to all these friends that work at utilities or work at manufacturers or in the environmental community or governments, is everybody was talking about it, and everyone was basically saying the same things of what we need to do, but nobody was talking together about it. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to create a coalition where all those entities could come together and work on the solutions. That 80% we agree on to be able to build market momentum and faith in each other so that we can work on the 20% that we still fight about. And hopefully through that momentum and that shared work together, it's going to make it easier to deal with some of the harder issues facing us. And so we created this coalition in 2018 of all these disparate parts. And we basically work in 3 areas. We work on changing policy at the state level. We work on market transformation, making sure that the products and the people within the market are supported and delivering what's needed to consumers. And then we work on consumer education. How do you have an educated consumer class that once every 15 years, when their furnace or boiler breaks, they're asking their contractor the right questions to make sure that for the next 15 years, they have a heat pump in their house rather than a fossil fuel appliance. And so this coalition is about 75 individuals across America working on each of those different areas with a ton of other partners in the space. And what I say to people consistently is this is the fastest growing clean energy sector we've ever seen.
Energy efficiency.
Building decarbonization. It's taken energy efficiency 40 years to never meet the mainstream. It took solar 30 years to be able to finally really crack through and actually start to be required by law in some places and to be able to hit cost parity. Building decarbonization wasn't even talked about in 2016. And you have whole states like New York and Washington and California, cities like New York City, Chicago, LA, all moving forward saying all new construction will be all electric moving forward. And we just have never seen a clean energy sector move that fast before.
I wonder if there is something from your 30 years of experience in this industry, in this space, that suggests, like, what are the catalysts that were required that we are building upon now? Sometimes I'll often state it this way, and I think that it rings true here. What needed to be true in order for that statement you just made to also be true? What needed to occur over the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years, such that for solar it took 30, for energy efficiency it took 40, and no round of applause. And now decarb in 10 years or less is the darling of the parade.
I think it's a moment that is happening in Nico. You have far more progress on climate change policy, climate change general awareness, and how buildings play a significant role in climate change. And so you're able to base this work off of strong climate policies in states that are leading on this issue is one thing. I think consumer awareness, and particularly the work done around gas stoves and indoor air quality, has also played a really large role. A fact like your stove may be the leading cause of pollution in your home is like one of those sticky things that doesn't get dislodged easily. And the Stovegate conversation of early 2023 educated tens of millions of Americans around the dangers of gas in their home, unlike any kind of environmental campaign that you could ever see. And then the commitment from the market. The market wants to do this. So we brought together all the HVAC and all the water heating manufacturers into DC last year for a 2-day summit. And they unequivocally came out with a statement saying, we, the manufacturing community of America, and all of the others around the world, like the Asian manufacturers of air conditioning and heating equipment, we want building decarbonization. We want to be a partner with governments that want to move forward in decarbonization. And we're ready to start to phase down our gas appliance sales and get our heat pumps out there. And so I think those three factors are really what's leading us to this moment where over the last 2 years, heat pumps have actually outsold gas furnaces for the first time ever in every month of those 2 years. And so we're at this really amazing point in the history of how we heat space, how we heat water, and how we cook food in America.
So you're seeing companies like Amana and Bosch and GE, Frigidaire, Electrolux, like all the big ones, embrace decarbonization, embrace electrification.
Yeah,
That's
what I'll say is
fascinating.
that the folks that work on the HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and also the water heating space, they're farther along than the cooking space, I would say. What's interesting is, and you may not know this, but only about 35% of American homes have a gas range in their home. All the rest are already cooking on electric. You wouldn't know it from the media, or you wouldn't know it from the fact that the media is heavily comes from the New York and the Los Angeles areas, which are heavy in gas cooking. So the HVAC and water heating manufacturers are much farther along and down. They're ready to go. The cooking manufacturers are still trying to play both sides of the fence and still really wondering and watching what's going to happen, which is understandable. They invested 40 years of like elevating the gas stove to a deity-like stature. And so this is a big transition for them. And while electric cooking is 65% of the overall market, induction cooking is only about 2% of the overall market. And so there's a lot of work from the manufacturers to figure out what the electric future looks like for cooking.
I have two questions. Who are the good actors in the range manufacturing sector, the ones that you're proud to be working with, and they're clearly taking seriously their role in moving things forward?
I've been really impressed by Middlebury. I've been very impressed by Wolf.
Wolf, really?
Yeah, Wolf. They've been releasing new products just this year. That's just beautiful, big induction stoves. LG is providing the complete electric home experience. They have heat pumps. They have beautiful heat pump water heaters that you would like put in your kitchen. It's so beautiful. They have induction stoves. They have battery systems. So LG is just putting out a whole 3 different lines of induction stoves.
I have one that's like a self-contained unit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like works when the power's off, which is one of the things that people are like, well, I can use my gas stove, which is true. I've used my gas stove in hurricanes.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. You better. I don't know if you want to have your window open during that hurricane to make sure that all the emissions are coming out, because you're not going to be able to have your fume hood work in that point. But you absolutely
this
can
is a question.
use it.
I mean, this is going to work against me in a moment, and you'll see why. But
Yeah.
like, we don't have a fume hood in our home.
You should definitely get a fume hood, Nico. You should definitely get a fume hood. Gas stoves, when they burn gas, release a number of different products. Carbon monoxide, I think we all know about, but also nitrogen oxide is one of the leading causes of childhood asthma, is one of the leading irritants.
That's why I go so fast, by the way, is because of all the nitrogen oxide in my system. Yeah. I'm like a Mustang in that regard.
Only tortillas is really quick. Yeah. But also formaldehyde, and also benzene. Like some nasty stuff comes out of open flames in your house. I mean, who would have figured, right?
How do you spell Middlebury? Is it like the university?
Bury on the end.
Yeah, like the university. So Middlebury, Wolf, LG, they're all good actors. Okay, cool.
Now, some real leaders.
I didn't do much here to help myself on this if I wanted to take a stance against, but convince me to switch my gas stove to induction.
Yeah. So say you like really powerful cooking. You like to be able to just get in there and get something to temperature really fast. You got kids. You don't have time to wait for the water to boil for all that water for pasta.
Yeah.
An induction stove is 3 times faster, 3 times more powerful than your best-in-class gas stove at heating up. And electric stoves are twice as powerful as your best-in-class gas stove. So there's that. The second thing is control. Now, that's one of the big issues with traditional gas stoves. You should think about it like the old coil or the flat top is not really great control. Induction has twice the control of your best-in-class gas stove as well. And so when you want to turn it immediately down or immediately up, induction blows the doors off of resistance electric or off of best-in-class gas. So it's more powerful. Right. It's got better control, and it won't give your kid asthma. Recent studies are showing as much as 1 in 8 cases of asthma in America and childhood asthma are related to gas stove use in the home. It's looking like it's as bad. An Australian study said it's as bad as having a cigarette smoker in your household, having a gas stove in your household. So I think if you like to cook,
I would kick a cigarette smoker out tomorrow.
Exactly. So if you like to cook, induction's better. If you don't like your kids to have asthma, electric's better. And so
will it replace my microwave then because it's so fast?
Probably not. I would keep your microwave around. You still want to have that amazing little.
I stick my head in from time to time, just
little nuclear beast in your kitchen.
Yeah.
Well,
then help me determine how to pay for it. I think this is one of the things, right? People get locked into appliances because, like you said, they're 15-year choices. So what options are available? Like, I would switch my gas stove out tomorrow. I know my wife really desperately she hates the location of our gas stove, which coincidentally, we can't change on our own. Even though I've got a best friend who's a journeyman electrician, I could easily reroute electricity anywhere in my home. I can't reroute gas. But if I could put my stove or my range anywhere, I guess that's the other thing that I want to ask about is like, we love the gas range for baking. My wife bakes a lot, which I already hear you telling me that's like 2 smokers in your house now, Nico. Congratulations. But how do I pay for it?
Yeah, you can get a very nice Samsung induction unit for $880 anywhere in America now, and it ranges up from there. Your bottom of the market gas range with oven is going to be about $600 to $700, so incredibly cost comparable. And you can get a wonderfully scoring Consumer Reports induction stove and oven for about $1,200. That scores some of the highest on Consumer Reports. So a lot of different models readily available. Even when you were maybe looking like 2 or 3 years ago, there's a ton more products out in the marketplace right now. So to me, that's pretty affordable.
I had Allison Archambault on, and she was like, Nico, why haven't you switched yet? And she had switched and raved about it. I can actually link to that episode. It was funny because I don't even it's amazing I can remember her name in this moment, but
it's a hard name too.
Her husband convinced her to make the change, and she was like, take my stove out of my cold dead hands. And she's in the climate sector. I think I remember that right. Maybe it was the other way around, but anyway, both of them are fanatical about it. And that was easily 3 Novembers ago. And I'm dragging my feet on it because I, like every other American homeowner, like I'm entrenched. Like it's easy to not change, and I don't have $1,200 lying around. Even if I want to make that change, are there incentives around for things like induction stoves?
There will be for income qualified people coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act,
right.
President Biden's large act. That'll be up to $800 off. But you're going to have to be of lower income in order to be able to qualify for that. And some states are saying they're not even going to be offering that part of the program within their states because gas stoves have entered so much into the culture war that they're just going to be offering pieces of the program, say for only heat pumps and heat pump water heaters.
And what do I do for baking in this case?
Baking, most gas stoves that are sold now still use electricity for their ovens. And so induction stoves generally all have convection stoves. Electric stoves have convection stoves, and many of them now come with
convection stove.
Many of them now come with air fryers as well, built in to the actual
I've been wanting
oven.
an air fryer, Panama.
Built in, yeah, wonderful technology nowadays. You can just have it.
My parents use their air fryer all the time. Our parents are such like they're Costco generation, right? Holy shit.
Yeah.
It's like Costco is basically the QVC of our time, right? Because you just walk through the aisles and they're like, you should buy this.
You're like, absolutely, you're right, I should.
I should totally do that. The number of times I make French fries all year long or fried chicken. Anyway, I digress. I am intrigued because I have not considered this as a real opportunity in a while for us, principally because my wife and kids love to bake. And also, I love spewing carcinogens into our home and challenging my children's respiratory systems to thrive.
Makes them tough, right?
Yeah, toughen up, boys. Got to live. Life's going to be a lot harder than just breathing in natural gas. Come on. Okay. You used a word that I want to not assume folks are familiar with from a mechanics perspective, and that is coalition. What is a coalition? You said 75 people are part of this coalition. What the heck is a coalition?
Yeah. And when I say 75 people, I mean on staff. We have 75 staff people around the country.
You have 75 people to work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. We have
with you that you work for.
74. Yeah, exactly. 74 that I support.
There you go.
So the coalition is well over 350 members now. And again, that's utilities, manufacturers of heating equipment, the design and construction community, installers, governments, and nonprofits, and then a whole mix of other randoms that come in. And it's a coalition because what we try to work on is what we can agree on. There's a ton of work to get done in this space, and we don't agree on all of it, but there's general agreement on a wide variety of things, like how do you deploy millions of more heat pumps? How do you educate hundreds of millions of more people? How do you stop subsidizing fossil fuels so that they don't look like there's this false economy between them and electric appliances? And so these are the kind of things. How do we lower electric rates to make electrification more affordable? These are the kind of things that we all agree on and we can all work on. And as I said, that then gives us some of the faith in order to be able to work on some of the stuff we don't. So what that looks like is when we go into the California legislature in Sacramento or the New York legislature in Albany, it's not just environmental groups going in there fighting for building electrification, but they're side by side with utilities and unions and environmental justice groups and the manufacturers of this technology and the installers coming in and saying, no, the market's ready. The market wants to go. What we need is a little TLC, transparency, longevity, consistency from policy to be able to give the market the confidence that this transition is really going to happen so they can start to invest in their manufacturing lines and their distribution lines and in their small mom and pop businesses that deliver heating and cooling to America's households is actually going to happen. And so that's what we mean by a coalition, because you're going to have better solutions when more voices are at the table, and you're going to have better implementation because more people will be bought into those solutions when the actual policies and the programs get rolled out. There'll be better programs that are going to work better for the installers and the customers, and the policies are actually going to be supported over the long term and won't be facing things like recalls or repeals because you would have had more people involved. And so that's why we think coalitions are critical to actually getting this passed and making it a resilient change.
I want to tag on to this because in thinking through the work that you're doing, I ask myself, why use the term coalition? And the natural thing I did was search what is a coalition, like how's it defined? And as opposed to other words you could have used, association being the most common one, alliance, very common one, even league or federation, consortium, a gathering of people with a sort of defined goal. The definition of coalition is unique. It is a coalition is formed when two or more people or groups temporarily work together to achieve a common goal. And I wonder how intentional it was, but for me at least, and you can take this up if it serves you. I love the vision that if we want to get together for a common goal of reducing the carbon footprint, it is not like we don't need an association that works for 100 years. Ideally, there's a temporary coalition because we get to the point where everyone's making the right choices and we build resources together, and then everyone can move off and solve other problems. Am I close to home there?
You are. It's because what we're looking at is to mainstream some technologies. It's the challenge, I think, so much of with solar has been like we're giving people a technology that for them is completely foreign. All of a sudden, you're selling them something new to have as part of their home. Whereas in building decarbonization, you're just trying to tweak how they do heating and cooling. You're just having a slightly different stove, but generally these are all technologies they already have in their home. And so the hope is that through policy, market transformation, consumer education, we're able to mainstream better, safer choices for people. And then we'll be able to walk away from it because that'll be just the way that we do it. And there's so many other concerns that every group that works in the coalition has with the world and climate change and utilities, et cetera, that they can then go back and work on. So that temporary nature is fundamental to how we work.
So let's bring this back to the individual consumer. If you're listening, you're thinking, how can I affect change? The same way that I'm considering replacing my gas range now immediately with an induction range. How's my home the greatest opportunity for climate action and community improvement that any individual has?
So there's a couple things here, Nico. One, your home is probably your largest contributor to climate change in your lifestyle, depending how much you fly, generally. But for the vast majority of Americans, the home, the emissions that come from operating your home, the use of gas appliances, the electricity that you use, it's generally the largest polluter. And so I always tell people, always start with yourself and then start with the things that you have the most amount of influence over. And your house is some of what you have the most amount of influence over. The second thing is we're finding that particularly as we're making a lot of progress on air quality laws for power plants and for cars, that in a number of our metro areas across America, buildings are actually representing a larger share of air pollution, local air pollution, than cars and power plants. In California, buildings are producing twice as much smog as all of the power plants and the cars combined across California. And we have 5 of the worst air basins out here in California. And it's like that in Denver. It's like that in New York City. And it's because we're really doing a great job on power plants and cars, and we're not doing a great job on buildings. And so from a local air pollution perspective, it's critical that we start to get fossil fuel appliances out of buildings.
I want to see if I heard you right.
Yeah.
So because somebody is now catching up because they just hit rewind 10 seconds because they were like, wait, what did he just say? In California, buildings produce twice the amount of air pollution as all cars and power plants combined. Is that what you said?
Yep. Nitrogen oxide is one of the leading precursors to smog.
That is jaw-dropping.
Yeah. And so we need policies that begin to phase them out. Cliffs are always hard to meet. And so we need policies that continue to increase uptake to mainstream these technologies. In California, 3 years ago, out of all the homes built 3 years ago, only 33% of them had heat pumps in them for heating and cooling. We now have 55% last year. We're starting to see significant market change as a result of the policies and the programs that are being implemented. And we have to be seeing that really everywhere if we're going to be able to meet our goals. But the last thing I was going to say is, it's really, you asked about the effect in your community. And one of the biggest effects on the future of our communities is going to be the economics of climate change. And when Russia invaded Ukraine, and we started to ship a lot more liquefied natural gas out of America to not only to Europe, but also over to Asia to help with their decarbonization policies, we've been seeing really dramatic price spikes, particularly in the winter, for natural gas prices. And what we're looking at is we're about to be making long-term investments into a gas system that has a lifetime far beyond most states' climate goals of carbon neutrality. So I said earlier that gas pipeline is a 60 to 80 year life. Many states that have adopted climate policies are trying to get to carbon neutral in about 25 years. And so what we're looking at is we're making long-term financial investments in our communities when we're either putting in new or replacing pipe that's going to need to be completely abandoned before even half of its useful life is over. And who's going to pay for that? It's likely ratepayers or taxpayers looking at a significant bailout of the gas industry in the 2040s. And so when I think about the long-term impacts on communities, it's absolutely the personal impact of air quality, the climate impact for global, the local impact of air pollution, but the dangers of this economic time bomb that we are just blindly investing in. One new customer gets hooked up to a gas network every minute in America, and that is an 80-year investment that we're making to have to repay.
Okay, so what I heard is, I love the way you framed that. If I reversed this, I would say one customer a minute? Is that right? One new customer per minute is connecting to an antiquated system that, by nature of the fact that we still continue to onboard customers, will need to be upgraded. And therefore, because we as a society have agreed, not in whole, but in part, that we need to move towards more electrified buildings for our climate future, these assets will become stranded assets in less than the half-life of the asset itself, which, if you look at the balance sheet, means somebody's going to get stuck with the bill. It traditionally has been rate-based. So the people who can afford in 20, 30 years to be completely off the grid or on some mini grid, which we see more and more, will be sheltered from this. And just this whole cycle that the California regulators believe they're trying to help resolve, right, will perpetuate itself largely because of the infrastructure we've built, which means that shit rolls downhill. And the people who are less capable of paying will end up being the ones who have to shoulder the burden of the entrenchment and the decisions we're making about how we're powering our infrastructure today in a renewal cycle of an antiquated century result system. Did I get that right?
You did. I think a lot of people are familiar with the electric utility death spiral. It's been talked about for the last decade of, as more and more distributed energy resources come on, as more and more people exit the electric grid, you're going to have ever increasing rates to cover those exits, to be able to keep up a system for that. And you start to have that makes it more cost effective for people to put solar up. And so therefore you have the downward spiral of the electric system. It's very similar to the gas network. As more and more people electrify their gas end uses, there's less people on that same length of pipe, less throughput going through it. So you have to raise rates and everyone that's left on there, which makes it more affordable to electrify. And you can start to see the downward spiral there. And so the real danger is not only, as you said, people without the means to make the transition early, but also people that don't have the agency to, like renters. Like the renter class in America, they don't usually have choices around what kind of appliances they put in their buildings. And so they're going to be forced into paying higher and higher gas rates with no ability to change out their appliances. Hard to electrify industries like restaurants. Some of the highest energy consuming on a per square foot basis and lowest margin businesses within our communities, our restaurants, are going to be facing a large capital cost to make this transition. And so we need to get in front of this, Nico. We need to be developing an adjacent market model that can really seek to avoid this unmanaged form of building decarbonization to take over and be able to protect people and industries that are critical to our communities in that process. And so we've really been advocating for not completely replacing the way that we do HVAC and plumbing right now, but a climate and justice backstop, a neighborhood scale approach where we can strategically look at those sections of the gas grid that are coming up for replacement. And instead of investing the $4 to $6 million a mile in California, $10 million a mile in California to replace gas pipeline, use that money instead to electrify all the buildings on that, retire that gas pipeline piece and save ratepayers, current and future, from those costs. And so we think that's going to be a far more equitable way to do it. It's going to be one that's in line with our climate timelines, and it's going to be the best way to protect ratepayers as well.
This concept of neighborhood scale, you guys have a blog post on specifically neighborhood scale, the future of building decarbonization. Unpack what it means to be neighborhood scale. And for those who want to read it, we'll link to, there's a document that BDC wrote in partnership with GridWorks on how this could look at a neighborhood scale. But what does it mean, and how can we, as not just homeowners, by the very nature of being a homeowner, for most of us, that means that we're involved in a neighborhood, but as stakeholders who want to see this become a framework, a philosophy for others?
Absolutely. So the first thing here, Nico, is the time imperative. The time imperative of being able to address climate change, but also the time imperative that generally when you replace your heating system, your air conditioning system, or your water heating system, it's an emergency. And you want that technology back and up and running so your family can have hot showers and they can be kept cool or warm when that breaks. And so expecting that in this time imperative that we're going to be able to educate all of the consumers of America and all of the contractors of America so that they're going to be making a choice for heat pump technology and induction cooking technology in this time frame, we feel is very unrealistic. So if we're going to meet our climate targets, we're going to have an adjacent market model that really gets around the need for consumer education, is able to bring these solutions to consumers as a really comprehensive campaign. The second thing is what you talked about, which is people with less means being left on an ever increasingly expensive gas system. And we need a system to be able to manage, to be able to get those communities off of the gas grid earlier rather than at the end of the transition. These are the folks with the least amount of ability to be able to pay for an expensive gas system. And so we should be really designing our transition to be helping them off of the gas system early on. And then lastly, is from the rate perspective. If we have to wait for every single individual choice to be able to eventually replace that last gas stove before we're able to clip the gas line to that neighborhood, that means we're going to have to gold plate two energy systems at the same time over the coming decades, both the gas system and the increasing electric system. It's literally the most expensive way to do building decarbonization for a ratepayer perspective, and we're going to have just a whole mess of stranded assets for probably taxpayers to bail out. And so neighborhood scale presents the opportunity to be able to work with the utility, to be able to manage whole neighborhoods, to being able to take off the gas grid, to be able to go in and educate consumers in a whole area at once around here's what electric technology is, here's how it works. Come down to your local community center and hear from this celebrity chef to show you how to cook on induction. Come over to your neighbor's house to see what it feels like in a heat pump conditioned home, and to be able to then hire a set of contractors that have the skills and are actually going to get permitted and be able to go out and be able to do all of the homes on this section of the gas grid to electrify them at a similar time, using the right technology, and being able to pay for all of it, and not have consumers actually have to bear the cost of this transition, but have it all be on a combination of the rates and on taxpayers to be able to pay off this transition and to be able to manage it in such a way that we don't have a huge hit to electric rates and gas rates. And so for us, in order to meet our climate goals, to protect vulnerable communities and to protect ratepayers, we have to have this adjacent market model stood up alongside the traditional market model of how we deliver HVAC and plumbing in America.
It sounds a little bit similar to, I'm going to call them business models, but sort of aggregation models like what Solar United Neighbors and Solar Crowdsource do. the solarize. Yeah. The whole idea that you can get neighborhood aggregation, for lack of a better model. So the question that I have is, what business models emerge from this approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. Those contractors, those installers of HVAC and plumbing that are able to reach scale, to be able to be hired by a utility to go in and do 50 houses at a time, 200 houses at a time, to have...
Think of like the frontier of HVAC.
Yes. To have the technology to be able to do large-scale assessments like that, and to be able to coordinate the procurement and the delivery of units and installations.
This seems like a
scale.
Massive opportunity.
It's
Panama,
huge.
Holy crap. Think about what I just said. So most people, if they're like not paying attention to the what's happening with Google Fiber and like the fiber of everything, one company is installing like 90% of the fiber in the United States, and it's a little company, now not little anymore, called Frontier. Right? They were the subcontractor du jour of choice by Google Fiber all over Durham. That's how I found out about it, and I started looking into it. And then when AT&T came into my neighborhood, guess who showed up to dig the trenches and lay the fiber? Frontier. Who's going to be the frontier of decarbonization? That's a question, because what Frontier is doing is laying the pipe, the glass cables, literally, of fiber for the next internet of the United States, right? Instead of it going over our television cables. And what you're suggesting is that we're going to see a radical transformation at a neighborhood level, at a municipal level, if we think of it that way, where city by city, someone's are going to get contracts for tens of thousands of homes and buildings.
Exactly.
Not door to door.
Exactly. And this isn't some far off vision. This is actually happening right now, Nico. Pacific Gas and Electric last year put on an RFP for 200 communities within their territory to hire consultants to come in and do this work. Puget Sound Energy has a pilot program with dozens of communities up in their area. Eversource over in Massachusetts is working on this. It's required by law up in New York that every utility in New York is having to pilot these approaches to be able to learn from them for the future of this space. And so the opportunity here is incredibly disruptive, because what it does is it breaks up the current model of our completely aligned supply and demand approach to heating, cooling, and water heating, where an appliance breaks, it gets replaced. So we have exactly the right number of installers for what the demand is. This is now going into areas and completely taking out fully functioning pieces of equipment early and putting in other stuff. And so the disruption opportunity is huge for people that want to get on the front end of this. And it's not just the installation, but you think about the logistics and the analysis and the delivery. The consumer education approach to this is completely different than anything we've seen. We need to get 100% buy-in and adoption within neighborhoods on this. And so there's all sorts of opportunities for disruption and innovation here.
Our friends over at Nexus Labs are loving you right now, because we need both media and market disruptors. So if it wasn't clear to you, this could be the biggest clean energy disruptor of our lifetime. We thought it might be solar. We thought it might be batteries. Nope. Turns out the appliance revolution is way bigger, and it's going to have a more meaningful impact when it finally takes root. I did not anticipate today finding sort of unearthing, as it were, new business opportunity for our community. But the opportunity here is incredibly ripe for this kind of disruption, and it's exciting as well.
Nico, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but one of the reasons I was excited about talking to you today is because what I've seen is the really big missed opportunity between the solar community and the building decarbonization community. You're right. There's a huge opportunity here, and I want the solar industry to look at building decarbonization as the next big wave of growth. When you electrify your average building in America and say take the 4 end uses of gas off of gas and put it on electric, you're at least doubling the electricity consumption of that building, you should be looking at the opportunity to then, I don't know, buy a third, buy another half, significantly larger PV system in order to be able to meet that load. I mean, this should be, building electrification should be one of the greatest friends to the solar community. And we just have not seen the relationships built between these communities yet that we need in order to be able to help both of our efforts moving forward. And so I'm really hoping that I can work with others in the solar community to start to build those relationships and those business models about people that can be delivering the fully solar electrified homes.
I've been saying for a while, the homeowner, solar opportunity is just one piece of the pie. And if you want to build a 30, 50, 100-year business, you have to figure out how to serve the whole experience of owning a home, not just the part of generating electrons. Because if you don't, those contractors who have been doing that already, even from AV to window washing, they're gonna expand their service offering. It's not rocket science to add solar as a construction trade. It's now very knowable, manageable. NABCEP and others make it easy to train your teams to do it and do it well. And companies that have incredible reputations already for safety, roofing, for reliability, HVAC, see this as a natural expansion. So if you're in the solar industry and you haven't started thinking about what else you offer the homeowner, I think that I'm not intending to call any of our peers one-trick ponies, but the large national footprint solar-only installer, I think, is a blip on the radar. When we look back in time, people will say, wow, that's all they did? Like, how'd they make a living doing that? It's a fair question today anyway, to be honest, if you look at the balance sheets of some of these companies. What have been some of the biggest successes or sort of milestones for you and with regards to building the coalition? And are there, beyond the white paper, and I want to touch on that in a minute, what sort of resources have come out of it?
The movement of entire large states like New York to say there's no way that we can continue to expand the gas system and have any hope of meeting our clean air or climate pollution goals. And so we are only allowing all electric new construction moving forward. Mm-hmm. The movement of states like California, which is saying that we know that we can't be allowing gas appliances to be sold in our state after 2030 and hope to meet our climate or clean air goals. Like, that's been really encouraging to see some of the policy changes. But I think some of the stuff I'm most encouraged about has been really the market actors and how the market actors have come to the table. In so many other sectors, it's a full-on battle with the incumbents to be able to get clean energy technology deployed. And the nice thing about this space is that many of the folks that make the gas appliances are also making the heat pump appliances, the heat pump water heaters, the heat pumps for air conditioning and heating, and the induction stoves and the electric stoves. And these market actors are actually excited and supportive of this transition, and they're just looking for some level of consistency from state policy so that they can go ahead and make the change. And so I think really bringing together, and that's what our coalition does, is it seeks to bring together these market actors and have them speak with one voice so that you can never say that the market doesn't support building decarbonization. It unequivocally does, and it needs the help from policymakers to do it. And so I've been just really encouraged by that work. We do a lot of work looking at different future scenarios, business as usual growth of the gas system versus more of an electrified future. And so we've released one report called The Future of Gas in New York, and we're just on the verge of releasing a new report. It may even be out by the time this podcast gets posted, called The Future of Gas in Illinois. And what it looks at is the economics of the gas system and gas system expansion and what it will mean for individual ratepayers and the dramatically higher costs that ratepayers are going to be paying in the near and the long-term future if we continue as business as usual growth of the gas system to support our buildings versus more of an electrified future. And not only the economic savings, but also the health savings that'll result from an electrified future. So if you Google future of gas and building decarbonization, those reports will come up. We also have an amazing library of all of the policies, all of the reports, all of the standards, the talking points.
Resource library is so rich.
Huge
Yeah.
resource library on our site. So buildingdecarb.org is just a wonderful place to see what is the best of the best out there. What can you emulate in your community, in your household, in your state legislature? So those are some of the things I'm most proud of.
One of the things I wanted to say and sort of give you kudos for in this world where it's hard to find a web page that doesn't require an email to download a white paper. I think that folks could pay attention and learn from how Building Decarb is going about disseminating thought leadership. Because you go to the page that we'll link to, which is the Neighborhood Scale Future Building Decarbonization white paper, and it says download now. I click download now, and the next thing that pops up is the white paper. I mean, this is
unbelievable.
It's like magic. It's unbelievable. And the coolest thing, I think, and I tip my hat to you. So like, I think the coolest thing is like right in the paragraph above it, I would argue that you probably could emphasize this a little more from a user interface perspective, is what as a marketer, I recognize as like the secondary goal. The download now is cool, but it also says, watch our recording from January 25th. And if I go to watch here, it's not just that one case study recording. It's like a whole page on heat pumps, water, affordable rate reform. It's all the webinars, a summary of the event, the slides. I mean, I really think that this is well done. I would encourage every company to adopt this method of lead generation, because the goal of thought leadership is not to capture someone's email. It is to influence them by your level of acumen. And if they choose to follow up, give them an easy way to do that by suggesting that if this looks good to you and you want to kind of see how we think about it, join our webinar. I would argue that if the webinar isn't gated for an email, which it probably is, it should be, because that's the place where we should expect it. I just think it was really delightful to see that that not be gated and requiring an email. Thank you for that.
And that was a conscious choice, Nico. You're pointing it out because that's irregular. And generally everyone's looking for a way to capture contact information and monetize it. And we really feel like if we want people to have trust and faith in each other, like we need to embody that as well. And we need to be clear with how we interact with everybody that comes into interaction with us. And I think the thing that I've been most proud about in the organization has been just the amazing people we have in our organization. And we have really strong values. We take hiring very, very seriously to be able to make sure that we continue like a really good culture of empathy and celebration and support. And it's a great place to work. It's a really amazing place to work.
For those who are listening and want to, and themselves were thinking, well, I'm listening to Suncast because I was looking at the solar industry, but this seems like it's even more on the forefront and exciting and growing quickly. What advice or maybe series of steps would you advise someone who, I'll make this very practical and tactical, actually. A fellow return Peace Corps volunteer, we call ourselves RPCVs, Panama, a friend connected. Yeah, thank you. We have a group of some 40-something of us RPCVs saving the planet, working in climate. And guy Drew Smith just got released to find his next opportunity. He worked as in mergers and acquisitions for Duke Energy. This is somebody who's like really well heeled. If Drew today listened to this episode and he goes, holy smokes, instead of staying in the energy sector per se and staying in solar, I want to jump into building decarb, what would his next steps be?
It's really going to depend in part about the piece of the supply chain that he wants to get into. And so right now, the manufacturers are all looking for decarb individuals with business acumen. And so looking to be able to bring people onto their teams, to be able to think about how do we strategize around heat pump deployment? Like, how do we identify those markets that are going to be the richest? I'll say that some of the markets that the manufacturers are identifying right now are not the ones with the largest climate goals. California, absolutely, but Texas and Florida are the other two big markets that the heat pump manufacturers are looking at. And so people coming out of places like Duke that have an understanding of the Southeast and the Southeast consumer base and what sells and what doesn't is going to be really valuable to manufacturers as they think about how do you deploy across the Sunshine State and the Lone Star State. So I think one is really identifying, like, do you want to be at the manufacturing stage, or do you want to be, say, in the installer stage? And the installers and the innovation that's happening there, everything from software to lead generation to conversions. There's amazing opportunities. There's been a lot of work over the years on the home performance industry, particularly during the Obama years and the Recovery Act. And so we've learned all the lessons from that and are starting to incorporate that into the building decarb space. And so I think that this issue of getting beyond the individual heat pump or the individual water heater and actually getting to scale, there's some real opportunities there. So organizations like Sealed or organizations like Block Power, these are organizations that are actually signing agreements with utilities, with local governments, and looking at scaled operations of analysis, procurement, and deployment. And so I would say looking for organizations like that are going to be fantastic for folks getting into the space.
In my experience, for those of you who are thinking about a job, I get this question a lot as well for the solar industry. I'm sure Panama does as well. We've been around for a long time. And I tell folks the same, like, generally speaking, do like Drew did. Go to the top and work your way down, not the bottom and up. A lot of folks are like, oh, I just got my MBA minted, I'm going to go to a startup. I think that's not the best way to leverage that fresh MBA. I think that anybody who works at like a PG&E or a Duke gets that 30,000 foot view, the acumen, you get cross-platform, cross-industry even exposure, and you really get to see how decisions are being made at a macro level of the industry that you want to function in. So manufacturers and utilities typically tend to be the best way to get that experience. And then installers, so there's like make the product, install the product, maintain the product, and finance the product. Those are kind of the four areas, right? If we want to think about it, just breaking it down, and how do we deliver this industry, any industry, roofing, it all correlates. Windows, anything, even food. You got to make it, you got to distribute it, you got to maintain it, like a grocery store, distribute it, and then you got, and then you've got to finance it somehow. And so, figure out where there you've got a skill set. One of my guests years ago, and probably the advice I've shared the most, is sort of the most applicable for job switchers, is if you're going to switch to a new job, you can do one of two things, but not both at the same time. You can switch industries, or you can switch core skill set, right? So let's say you're in finance and you hate it. I wouldn't advise that you switch to business development in solar. I would advise that you switch to business development in banking or wherever it is that you work. Or if you are, so therefore, if you're in finance and you want to move to solar, be in finance in solar, right? Take that skill set. Don't try. And I see so many people, Panama, they'll do this. They'll go get an MBA and they'll come out of their MBA and they will go, oh, I'm going to go be a project developer in solar. And it's like, well, how? Explain. I mean, I understand that actually having a fundamental understanding of modeling is useful as a project developer, but I can promise you, you're going to move faster and higher, putting that finance skills to work in the solar industry. And then 2 or 3 years later, you are going to be super valuable to a developer. Anyway, my 2 cents on that. Panama, as we wrap, I know that folks are going to go check out your website, but for the sake of repetition, it is buildingdecarb.org. How, if they're so inclined, could they connect with you?
They can always reach out directly to me. As we're building a bigger and bigger team, I'm able to better work on partnerships and strategy. And so Panama at buildingdecarb.org is the best way to reach me, and love to talk to folks that are interested in how do we increase decarbonization in the space. We need a lot more people engaged in this. And so I look forward to anybody, particularly solar warriors, reaching out and making contact.
And if you are a traditional sort of long-term Suncast listener and you're wondering why I didn't go into the whole backstory, Panama has a fascinating backstory. I hope he tells it someday on the show. But I felt like there were more tangible things that we needed to get to that did, in fact, take us through the entirety of the time that we have. Panama, if you could leave every person that you meet with one thing, what would it be?
If you want a way to be able to have a more comfortable, safer home, community, and climate, there is some very simple things that you can do. Things that you don't even think about as part of your home, your heater, your water heater, your stove, are easy things to replace when they break. Many states have easy programs to help you with this transition. And you can make a significant difference, not only in your own lives, but the lives of people in your community and the lives of communities around the world.
And Panama, lastly, what will have changed as a result of the work that you're doing?
We're going to have significantly less children suffering from asthma and suffering from respiratory attacks as a result of indoor air pollution. We're going to have communities across America, but also across the world, with significantly less smog and emergency room visits of children and elderly people as a result of air pollution. And we're going to eliminate 1/3 of all of the greenhouse gas emissions from one of the worst polluting countries in the world here when we accomplish our goals. And as a result of that, people are going to be happier, healthier, with more affordable lifestyles. And I think that's the thing that all 75 of us at the Building Decarbonization Coalition wake up and work on every day.
Panama Bartholomy is the founder and executive director of the Building Decarbonization Coalition. As we achieve the success that you have envisioned for your organization, not just for the 75 folks that work alongside you, but the 350 plus organizations and counting that have joined in the coalition, we'll be watching, not from the sidelines, because listeners of Suncast are not on the sidelines. Just want to thank you, Panama, for giving us such a generous amount of your time today. I truly have enjoyed it. I've learned, and I look forward to hearing the feedback from others.
Thank you, Nico. Great to be here.
I just want to say thanks to you. If you're still listening, I really want to salute all the way to the end of the podcast listeners. You could be doing anything with your time right now. And if you are still paying attention to us, either your hands are wet or your phone is somewhere you can't reach it, or you're hoping there's one last thing. And I guess the one last thing is, we have uncovered a wealth of resources that, and even talked about them here, that you probably want to go check out. We've linked to them in the show notes. We've linked them hopefully in the description if we're doing our jobs right, right there in Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Pocket Casts, wherever you're listening to the podcast. But be able to click on that link and it'll take you to those resources. If you can't find them, then email me, nico@suncast.me, and I'll point you in the right direction, or team@suncast.me as well. And hey, by the way, since I feel like most of you are still listening to us on the podcast, and if our statistics are right, you're in Apple Podcasts, just give us a little virtual hug and rate and review the show. Just give us that 5-star review to remind us that we are doing the work that makes meaning in your life and value. And a little review that says why you keep listening helps other smart people just like you, when they find the show, go, oh yeah, people like us do things like this. And it just helps us grow the audience. Us and Panama, so many of us are doing this because we want to raise awareness. We want to increase the level of communication so that you all can live your best lives. I believe that as a result of this conversation, we're going to help you get a little closer to that goal. I want to thank our sponsors, because while you pay attention, they pay the bills for us. They help us keep the lights on, and we wouldn't be where we are without them. You can learn more about them and the cool products they're bringing to the world by going to mysuncast.com/sponsor. And If you are curious, that's also where you could learn how you could partner with us to reach thousands of solar warriors and climate champions each and every week, twice a week. I want to remind you that you are what you listen to. Thanks again for showing up, Solar Warrior. It's half the battle.